Hi, and welcome to Deep Leadership. I'm your host, John Rennie. Back in episode 24, we talked to Colonel George Milton about failure. Today, we're flipping the script. In this episode, we're talking about success. My guest is Fred Stuvek, former quarterback for the Naval Academy, Navy veteran, business leader, startup CEO, and now author. Fred is someone who has enjoyed tremendous success in his career in both sports and business. We're discussing why so many people miss out on achieving their goals. This is a powerful episode that you don't want to miss. So, are you ready to dive in? Let's get started.
Welcome to Deep Leadership. Leadership is a people business. That's the philosophy of your podcast host, John Rennie. As a former Cold War submarine officer who spent 20 plus years leading businesses in corporate America before starting his own manufacturing business, he knows that leadership matters. Are you ready for some real-world actionable advice from John as well as his expert guests?
I'm ready.
The show starts right now.
Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today I'm joined by Fred Stuvek. Fred is someone who has enjoyed incredible success in a number of different areas in his career. He was inducted into the Pennsylvania Sports Hall of Fame for achievements in football, basketball, baseball, and track. He played football at the Naval Academy, where he lettered for 3 years as quarterback for the midshipmen. He served as a naval officer like myself. He also held key leadership positions in both public and private companies. He also led several business startups. And what we're going to talk about today is he's written 2 amazing books about success. So I'm excited to have him on the show today to talk about how we can all achieve greater success in our careers. So Fred, welcome.
John, thank you for having me on. It's an honor. I look forward to talking with you.
Tell us a little bit about your background. How did your involvement in sports at a young age, how did that build such a strong foundation for you for your entire career, both in the Naval Academy, in the military, and then through business leadership?
Well, I grew up in a small coal mining town. I was actually born in West Virginia and raised in southwestern Pennsylvania. And we had 4 seasons. We had football, basketball, and we had track and baseball, and I participated in every season. And, as a result, I was just used to practice, the regimen. I never really had much idle time. And the people in the community were solid people, good values, solid work ethic. So that all kind of resonated with me, and it was one of the reasons I also decided to go to the Naval Academy. Was the place resonated with me. I just took a look around. I just liked what I saw. I looked at the values and what they represented. I thought it would make me a better person, and I thought it was a good fit for me. And as it turned out, it was a good decision. And I was always a very disciplined, regimented person, and this was just a natural evolution in my growth and becoming an individual.
And you had an opportunity to go to other universities, but you chose the Naval Academy. The Naval Academy is not exactly an easy place to go to school. I mean, you're talking about varsity sports, football team, which is a very it's got a high center of focus, right? Everybody's watching the football team. They want to win. You got to beat Army every year, right? So you're part of that. You also have the discipline of being in the military for the first time. So as a plebe and going through all that. And then you have your studies on top of that. So you chose a very difficult path. And as you mentioned, it required hard work, discipline, focus, right? To get through those 4 years, I'd imagine.
Yeah, yes, it did. Looking back, I mean, my dad played football for West Virginia, and it was always thought that I would go to West Virginia or Penn State and play for one of those 2 schools, and I had offers from both. However, when I went on the recruiting trip to the Naval Academy, I was captivated. I just said, I have to go here. I came back, and I told my parents that I'm going to go to the Naval Academy. My mother started crying. She said, no, you're not. You're not going to go to Vietnam. I said, Mom, if I don't go, who's going to go? I said, we just all can't have that attitude. But anyhow, it was something I believe in. It was a chance to serve my country. And you're right. It was a tough environment at the Naval Academy. We had a 1960s schedule and 1970s recruiting environment. We had the second toughest schedule in the nation. I believe Northwestern had the first toughest. And so week in and week out, we were pretty much the underdog. But it taught us to be resilient and to never give up. And, we work together as a team. We lose as a team. But we had a very strong bond that carries on, to this day. In the middle of all that, we had our military duties. We had our studies, the engineering, electrical engineering, celestial navigation, weapons systems engineering, all the courses that excited me. So it was pretty, you didn't have much free time, so to speak. And any free time you did have was taken up by football, because to practice, you would have to come early before the brigade returned. You'd have to give up 2 weeks leave. And it was also optional as a quarterback to come back a week early for some skill training. So the net result is I had about 8 or 9 days of vacation every year or leave. And that was it. So, it's just like you, John. I mean, when you were on a Tennessee, you're out under the water. You're in the water there for weeks, months on end. You come back, you get a few days off. You think it's a pretty good deal, don't you? You do, yeah. Gives you exactly. So when I got out of the military and I got into the civilian world, I mean, we had weekends off and we weren't deployed for 6 to 8 months. I thought it was a pretty good deal. And I was just surprised why everybody was complaining.
It's funny you're saying that, because I have a whole chapter in my new book talking about hard times and how they give you a fresh and new perspective, and how exactly the same thing. I got into, working my first job in the civilian sector, and I thought, this is so much easier than I ever expected. There's no rough seas. I'm not trying to take a ship to periscope depth. We're not sneaking away from a potential ship or submarine out there. It just seemed easy every day compared to what we had seen and what we went through. So I think hard times do give you a really interesting perspective. So,
yes, it does, and it also taught me and you the value of working together as a team. I mean, for example, you're on a Tennessee. You're thrown in with a bunch of people. You didn't pick them. They didn't pick you. Exactly. You're there. They could be from wherever.
Yes.
But you have to work with these people and get along. You have a mission to accomplish. You have to work together as a team. You win or lose as a team, and you develop a routine and a protocol for success. You drill, you practice, and if you look at it, that is excellent training for business. And I think one of the problems some of these young people have, and again, I'm not picking on the young people, I'm just saying I've seen this, is they tend to associate with like-minded individuals. Have a clique. They in school, when they're in college, they all hang out together and they associate with like-minded individuals. And then when they get out and get with another organization or company, all of a sudden they're thrown in with this host of characters that they're not familiar with, and it becomes a challenge for them. And that's a problem.
It is a problem. We had to get along with whoever we were deployed with, right? There was no substituting a sailor if you didn't like him, or another officer if you didn't get along, right? The hatch is shut. You're gone for 90 days, and you learn to get along with people you had different opinions with, or had disagreements with, and you learn to get along. So I think it taught us a lot about trying to find common ground, right? Today we don't do that as much, right? We all have our opinions, and we want our opinions to matter. But, when you're trying to achieve a mission and you're locked in a metal tube, you learn to, compromise and work together. So,
yeah. And that was one of the things that, I mean, I'm sure you've hired a lot of people as well, but, my former positions had to hire a lot of people. And I have to admit that I was biased towards those people with military experience. I think the military experience is great experience. It helps prepare you for business by working with a team, by being disciplined, by showing up, And by being able to follow a routine and being able to handle adversity and some of the rigid circumstances to come up. So I wasn't disappointed with my hires anytime somebody had military experience. I'm
Yeah,
sure
I
you
was
weren't either, were you?
same thing. And even today in my company, I have military veterans, and I think you're right. And I think part of it is when you've been through tough times and you have that perseverance, right? You don't let little things get you down. You keep pressing forward. I've got a gentleman who works for me who was Iraq, Afghanistan as a Marine, and you can't stop him. He's going to get it done no matter what, and that's what I like about him. So. That's good. So, when you think about your time as a leader in working in big companies and also your startup companies, how do you think your sports background, being in team-based sports, having to have discipline like that, and also your time as a naval officer, how did that really help you as a leader in the businesses when you ran them?
Yeah, if you look at leadership, I mean, I think one of the things that surprised me between civilian life and military life was the confusion about positional authority versus personal authority. When you have positional authority in the military, but in the civilian world, I think the personal authority is very important as well. And I think sometimes people tended to rely a little bit too much on the positional authority. I think that one of the things that surprised me in the business world was the lack of leadership and the lack of accountability that existed. There were many people that were appointed simply because they could sell a lot of this or that, and it wasn't really based on leadership capability. And I think that leadership in and of itself cannot necessarily be taught. It has to be learned in an environment where the cultures and values are sustained on a day-to-day basis and reinforced. And as long as you have that sustainability and an organization that will adhere to those core values throughout time, then you have the chance to learn that leadership. But and that's very difficult. You understand what I'm saying, John?
Yeah, I think, when you kind of go back to the military, there was that cultural foundation that existed, right? As far as, duty, honor, there was tradition. So there was something there, right? And you built your leadership in those constraints or in that world. Whereas when you get to a lot of companies, sometimes that exists, sometimes it doesn't exist. So the way to be an effective leader is having that organization where you do have those cultures, that culture that exists. That, for example, in our business, one of the most important things we say is a show of respect, right? We respect each other, and that's one of our core values as a company, and we're living it every day, and it's part of our culture, it's part of who we are, and it's something that I do to my people, and then my leaders do it to their people, and it's something that's consistent within the organization. It's something that becomes a norm, a business, part of our culture, and the way who we are as a business.
Yeah, and some of the protocols or habits from the military carry well over into civilian life. For example, the need to drill, the need to be disciplined, but also the need to have a contingency plan. There was, again, another thing that surprised me in the civilian world was the lack of contingency planning. In other words, okay, we're going to do this. And I would say, what if that doesn't work out? Well, of course it's going to work out. Well, John, as you know, it doesn't always work out that way.
No.
So you need to have a backup plan. And it's the little details that get you. You heard the expression, from small rocks do avalanches begin. Well, you can do 97 or 98 things out of 100 right, but there's that one or two other issues that will come around and they'll plague you and become a problem. So it's the attention to detail and that repetition and the training and the drilling. It all comes together, and I think it's very valuable experience for and transferable to the civilian world.
Yeah,
Eminently so.
I think so as well. Absolutely. So let's talk about your first book. We're going to get into both your books, but I want to talk about your first book, which I've got right here, and it starts with you. And this is an interesting book. It's about success, right, and how to achieve success in your life, in your career. Before we start into the book, I want to talk a little bit about how would you define success? You've written a book about it, so how do you define it?
I would define success as doing something that you're good at, that you feel it makes a difference, and doing it well on a day-to-day basis. And then if you do that, I think the rest of the stuff will follow. But that's why you need that alignment. You have to do something that you believe in, that's a good fit for you, and you'll be fulfilled. Otherwise, you're going to have a mismatch, and you're going to have a problem. But it should be something that you believe in, okay? And it's a good fit. Because if you don't believe in it, John, it's going to come back and it's going to bite you in the butt later on, because the money can be good, but then you find yourself dealing with all this stuff you don't really believe in, becomes a hassle, and then you lose balance. It spills over into your personal life, and the next thing you know, you wonder what happened. Wonder why, and that's because you're not properly aligned.
It's interesting you said that, because the answer you gave did not talk about a private jet or fancy cars or a big house on the ocean. It's about doing what you were meant to do and doing it well. It sounds like, from your definition, which is interesting, because I was on a podcast recently and someone asked me that about what my definition of success is, and my answer was very similar to what you just talked about, which was, and for me, it was the idea of working hard towards a goal over a long period of time, and then finally one day achieving that goal and having that 5 minutes of just saying, I did it. I did what I set out to do, and having that just little, and it's not something, it's sort of a breather, look around, say, I finally did what I set out to do. And then you go off to the next one. You go after whatever the next target you're after or what have you. But it's that chance to little, for me, it was a little 5 minutes, just say, I did it. I did what I said I was going to do. And that, to me, is success. Is just going after something and finally achieving that dream. So,
yeah. When I transitioned from the military civilian world, it's a long story, and this could be the subject of another podcast. But the set of circumstances was such that I ended up in a position where I was very excited about this opportunity. And I hadn't been, because I've been looking for months. And then this opportunity came up with a company called Siemens. It was in the medical system division. I thought this was amazing technology, could really help people. But when I got home after I accepted the job, my wife goes, "What's the salary?" I said, I don't know. She says, "Is there a bonus situation?" I said, "I really don't know." I just said, "I'm in." And I shook hands, and I figured it would work out.
Yeah.
And I never picked a position based on money. I've always felt if you're good at something and you like it, that's, other people are going to pick up on that. The money will follow. It usually, the other way in reverse does not work long term. It can work short term, but it can't work long term.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Yep. The money will come if you're doing something you love and you're good at it. It'll follow. It'll follow. Mm-hmm. So, so why do you think, we're going to talk about the book a little bit, but why do you think so many people miss out on their goals, miss out on the things that they're trying to achieve? There's probably thousands of self-help books out there and ways that you can try to improve yourself. Why do you think that most people come up short on their goals?
Well, it could be a number of things. I think number one, it's a lack of discipline. Okay. And number two is, if you're disciplined, you then should have the ability to define the goals and identify the obstacles, follow a routine, because you can be motivated, John, but you're not always going to be motivated. So therefore, you need to be disciplined. Okay. So you need to have that discipline, and you need to have that commitment. Okay. When I say commitment, you need to have that determination, belief in what you're doing. Okay, so if you have that discipline, and if you have that commitment, and you're good at what you're doing, then you're going to then you're going to have to be able to persevere, and you're going to have to be able to handle those tough situations, be able to accept failure, learn from it, adapt, and move on. So why aren't a lot of people successful? It could be a lack of discipline. It could be they're not really committed to what they're doing and don't believe in it. Okay. It could be that they've never had a chance or an opportunity to experience failure or to encounter adverse circumstances. I mean, for example, John, if you've been told you're special your entire life, you get trophies for showing up, have never been criticized, and go to schools where they help you get through and get good grades, all of a sudden, when you get out in the real world, it's a real shock to your system. If you follow me.
Yeah, you're not resilient, right? You're fragile. You haven't been tested, right? So, if you look at your career coming through sports, I mean, even before you got the Naval Academy, you were being tested in sports all the time, right? And you won and you lost, right? And there was lessons in both, right? And you're doing that. Then you get the Naval Academy, you're learning the discipline side of what it takes to be a future naval officer, and also in the middle of playing a very, very focused sport, very highly visible sport there. Then you come into the business world. So I think all these things tie in together to make you a resilient person, because you've faced a lot of adversity through your time. And so I think, when I look for people, when I'm hiring people, I actually look for the people that have overcome tough things and that have faced adversity and come out on the other side, because I want to see people who have grit, people that can stick to things even when they get hard. That's really important to me. And if I was to describe any characteristic I have as a person, that would be the one characteristic I have. I'm not, I might have degrees, but if I haven't, one of my degrees, all it is just hard work, right? I mean, it's not that I'm smart. It's just that I've never quit. And that's been a big part of my career. Sounds like for you, it's been the same thing. You face tough times, you persevere through it.
I think how an individual handles adversity is probably the biggest challenge in their life. And being able to maintain your composure during, when situations are tough, and keeping a cool head and crafting a recovery plan, having the resolve to stay on course to get it done. And that's all so important. Like JFK said, grace under pressure is one of the most admirable human traits.
Yes.
Well, as you know, John, anytime you've been involved in a difficult situation, how you react with the men and women under your charge is just as important as to what you do. Okay. So your reaction sets the tone. And that's why when you talk about leadership, I mean, leadership is also body language and how you act. Well, when you're in an adverse situation, they see that you're rattled or flustered. That does not exactly imbue confidence in those following you. So and you really, I mean, you have to understand the diversities there. I call it awareness, acceptance, and action. You have to be aware that it's there. Okay. You have to accept what's going on, and you have to craft a plan of action to get it. And by the same time, you have to be resilient, and you have to ensure that you have the right people in the right place to handle this, because not all people can handle adverse or difficult situations. But by the same token, those some people will be valuable later on. So you have to protect those who are at risk. And that's something a good leader is going to do as well.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Deep Leadership is brought to you by Strikeforce Energy. Strikeforce Energy is a veteran-owned company founded by a Navy SEAL, and their products are all made in the USA. Strikeforce Energy is a liquid flavor pack that you can add into any beverage. It has 0 calories, 0 carbs, and 0 sugar. Each pack contains 80 milligrams of caffeine. Strikeforce Energy is offering a discount to all the listeners of Deep Leadership. Go to strikeforceenergy.com and enter the discount code IHaveTheWatch, one word, for a 20% discount on every order. Deep Leadership is also brought to you by my Amazon best-selling book, I Have the Watch, Becoming a Leader Worth Following. This book is filled with 23 short stories on how you can become a more effective leader. It's super easy to read, and most people finish it in less than 2 hours. Go to ihavethewatch.com and click the large orange button for signed copies. Enter the discount code IHaveTheWatch, one word, at checkout for 20% off your order, and domestic shipping is always free. Well, first of all, I think the book is great. I think the fact that you cover about a third of the book is on overcoming, persevering, overcoming adversity. I think that's really good to see, because I think it's not as talked about as much in some of this, self-help or success books. Is that that is you're going to face tough times. I mean, you did a business startup. I'm in the middle of a business startup. I can tell you this. We wrote a great business plan. We had a great. We knew what we were going to do, and then life comes at you fast, right? And then you're in the midst of building this brand, and things change, and you've just got to stick to it. And it's a roller coaster ride. Some days you're on top of the world, you land this big order, and the next day maybe have a quality problem, or you have a delivery issue, and or your cash flow is low, and you're dealing with those kind of things. So you have to be in it for the long term, and you have to be able to persevere if you want to get to the end result of building a successful brand, a successful company. I mean, entrepreneur's journey is not for the faint of heart. It's a difficult business. And I think people see this stuff on the internet. They get a picture of a guy in front of a Mercedes and a private jet, and they say hustle. And that's going to motivate you. You're going to need more than hustle.
Well, if you look at the statistics for startups and all that, it's really not that good, John.
No, it's not good at all.
It's not good at all. I think 8 out of 10 are out of business within 2 to 3 years, and only 10% or less last longer than 5. And when you talk about adversity, when I started up my last company, we did a SWOT. We're starting it up. We did what are the the SWOT thing.
Right,
so we did the threats, and I like the numbers 3, 5, and 10. I said, okay, my 2 partners are, what are the 10 things that will kill our business? Let's just list 10 things. So we put 10 down, and we said, okay, well, we can handle 2 or 3 of these, but we'll never get a complete, we'll never get a full storm there. Well, things happen 2 ways, John. Gradually and suddenly, we woke up one day, all of a sudden 7 out of the 10 were in front of us. And we're like, what happened? And I mean, it was tough, but we got through it. And I think I think my background was helpful in that regard. I remember we actually went and met with an attorney because my chief financial officer said we need to file for bankruptcy. We went in the meeting, and we were there for about 5 minutes, and I stopped. I said, "Nah, this ain't going to happen." I turned to him. I said, I thought you said this was an administrative issue. I said, this is embarrassing. I said, we're not going to do this. I said, I'm excited about what's going on. We're going to get through this. We're going to move on. We're going to learn from it. And I said, you're going to be better for it. So let's get this.
Yeah.
It turned out okay.
Yeah.
It wasn't easy, but it turned out okay. But I'm telling you, John, if you have that attitude and that resolve, okay, you can get through just about anything. And that's what I mentioned in my book. I said, what are the things that are most important? It's your mindset and your habits and your determination, and having the discipline and the resiliency to withstand the tough times that come your way, because they will, and they do.
They will come your way. Yeah, there's no avoiding them. Yeah, exactly.
If you think, if things are going great for you, John, right now, well, enjoy it, because that's not going to be the case maybe 12 or 18 months from now, right?
Next week.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, exactly. So, some people, I always say this when they say, "Oh, yeah, I'm thinking about starting a business." And in the back of my head, I'm saying, "Well, pack a lunch," because it's hard. It's very difficult. and takes a special breed. I think entrepreneurs are a special breed of people. And I think you have to almost come up through something like you did in your career, and like myself, where you've been through some tough times. So I think you can ride through that roller coaster of emotions and just stay focused on the goal. And I think that's really important. So
you need to ditch the rose-colored glasses.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And you need to accept that not everything is going to go the way that you want it to. And you have to be prepared for some tough times. But it's just I always say a crisis is only bad if you respond negatively to it. Well, that may sound like a simple statement, but it goes to what I said earlier. It's how you react and how you respond. And that's it's setting that tone. And I mean, John, you've been through some tough times, and you've gotten through them, haven't you?
Sure.
Yeah. And have you seen other people, same circumstances or similar circumstances? Some of them folded, right?
True. Yeah.
And the difference is your background, your resolve, your determination, and your ingenuity. And those are things that it takes.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, it sure does, and I think that's and I've seen Angela Duckworth's book on grit. I don't know if you've seen that book, but it's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite books because I think she nails it, and she finally sort of uncovers. She's actually sets out to find out why what are the reasons why certain people get through beast barracks at West Point. So she was hired to study this. And was it that you were an athlete? Was it you came from certain background or family? Was it your education, your IQ? And she kept coming back to this one thing. All the research pointed out that these people had grit. They had this level of perseverance. They had such a passion for their goal, whatever it was, like to be an Army officer, that they weren't going to let the small things put that goal away from them. They were going to achieve their goal no matter what. They had a passion and a persistence to get towards that goal. So kind of an interesting book. And she didn't set out to discover that when she did her research, but that's the one thing that came out was this, it's a passion and persistence towards a long-term goal. And that's what she calls grit. And I think that when I didn't know it was called grit, but when I read the book, I said, I think that's probably what I've got. It's probably this just sort of passionate towards something like, a naval officer. Becoming a naval officer is not an easy thing to do. Becoming a nuclear submariner is not an easy thing to do. Getting your dolphins, on a submarine is not an easy thing to do. Becoming a naval engineer is not an easy thing to do. So these things all require hard work, perseverance, but also a passion. You want to get there. You have this dream and desire to get there. So,
no, exactly. And I mean, you mentioned the becoming a nuclear officer. Did you have an interview with Rickover by chance, Admiral?
No,
Rickover?
I was just outside that time frame. Yeah, no, I did not have it. So I had another admiral, but I still had to meet with an admiral as a midshipman and go through an interview process, which is a little intimidating. So that
was the interviews with Rickover were the stuff of legend.
They were, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it was probably only one person, but I think the act has been attributed to many, particularly when there's alcohol involved. But you've heard the one where he said, "Make me as mad as you can, or do something to upset me or to get my attention." And the guy took a chair, walked over, and smashed the model of this submarine that was in his office. Yeah. You heard that one, right?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know who it was that did that, but I know a few people have claimed to have been that person. So
yes, I've heard that, and being locked in a closet all day. These are funny stories. So let's shift gear here, just in terms of time. I want to talk about your new book. You have just launched a book last month, and this is interesting, and I think it's very timely. So tell us about the book and what it's about.
Well, the book is called "Don't F This Up," and it's a visceral title. But right now, I mean, due to the pandemic and everything, opportunities are going to be limited, and these young people are coming into an environment where things are very bleak, and the opportunities are limited, and the margin of error is less. So it's important that they get it right the first time. And in the book, I I talk about a number of issues, many of them similar to what I talk about in my first book. But the two issues I talk about that are very important are alignment and gaps. When I talk about alignment, you have to understand what motivates you and match those beliefs with your personality, skill set, interests, and values. And if you do that, it's going to help you later on when you're going through those difficult times. And the other thing you need to do is fill in the gaps. Is what skill sets do I need to develop to be good at this? What do I have, and what don't I have? And you also then, what you don't have, you either need to develop it or develop coping strategies, or you need to understand I can't do this. Okay, and so you have to be true to yourself. You have to be honest with yourself, because if you're not, you could have a mismatch, which is eventually going to come back and cause you problems and going to result in dissatisfaction, personal problems, stress, burnout, broken marriages, drug abuse, who knows what else. But it's so I talk about alignment and having the need to fill in the gaps and be trained. But what I also talk about is success is not one thing. Okay. Success is a number of things done consistently well over an extended period of time. And there are a number of things that are important. And I talk about them in the book. I talk about how to develop habits, talk about discipline, et cetera. But one of the things I've done, which I think is different than some of these other books, I talk about what is important, why it's important, and how you do something about it. And it is very specific. I have it's grouped into 3, 5s, and 10s. Again, they're my favorite numbers, but most of them are like, say, okay, these 5 things are important, and this is what you do about it. So, for example, failure. Why is failure important? That may sound weird, but I talk about why failure is important. Okay, and then what do you do whenever you are encountered with failure? Okay, these are the steps, things like that. I talk about how to develop discipline, how to develop better habits, how to put together a strategy, how to develop goals, things like that. These are all things that these young people aren't being taught in school. Okay, but this is real world stuff that's going to enable them to be successful. And it's great to have all the answers, but if you don't know what questions to ask, how are you going to get the right answers? So this is a chance for these people to know what questions to ask, to get the answers, to get it right, to optimize their chances for career success and fulfillment.
Really good. I think it's timely. I mean, like you said, your room for error right now is tight. I mean, there's less opportunities. We have a lot of problems right now. We have I don't even know who's hiring right now in terms of big people coming out of college looking for a job right now in the middle of COVID, right? Who's getting interviews, who's getting hired. So you have to be very good if you want to be successful, if you want to do the things you want to do in your career. So I think the timeliness of this book is really important. And it just came out a month ago, right? If I'm not mistaken. Yeah, that's good. So, have you got some early feedback from some people who have read through it, or what are people saying?
Not
as they
too
get
much.
Through it?
I mean, okay. I've gotten some feedback, but the feedback I have gotten back has been very positive, and I think it will continue to be, because this stuff works.
Yeah, it's an important message. Yeah.
It's this is stuff that works. It's proven. It gets results, and it works. It's not based on theory. It's based on actual results. It's based on stuff that you've done, that I've done. I mean, this is not complicated, but these are issues and principles and tactics that are not taught in school. Okay, see, when you go to school, you go to school to get good grades. Well, you don't go in business to get good grades. You go into business to get something accomplished. And there's a gap. There is a problem. So this bridges the gap between their education and the real world.
I like that. Yeah.
Now they're told, they're told everything's going to be all right. Or if you go to good school and get good grades, you'll be fine. but maybe it's not going to be all right. And it's probably not going to be all right, even more so today with what is going on. And you're right about the margin of error. It is really shrinking. And that's something I bring up in the book about the margin of error. But I mean, I think right now, John, many of these companies are kind of in a holding pattern. And when they come out of this, which we will come out, science and time will take care of this. I'm convinced it's just a question of when the science is going to catch up and how long it's going to take. And I mean, I could go on the internet and find an opinion for just about anything that I want right now.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. But at the end, these companies may end up with some type of a hybrid arrangement too. They may find, I don't need this many people. I can work this and stagger that. So we have to see how this is going to shake out. And these young people need to be aware as to what's going on and adapt to these circumstances and come up with new strategies as well.
I think it's great. I think, like I said, I think the timing of this book is fantastic. I think, for those of you who are listening, if you're, just starting out your career, you're listening to get some leadership advice or what have you, this would be a great book for you. You want to set yourself apart from the people that you're, if you will, competing with in the workplace. This is a great place to start. If you want to learn how to be successful, listen to people who have been successful. Those are the people you want to listen to. You want to align yourself with. You want to be around. So I think someone like yourself who's had a lot of success in your career, you're the type of person that people need to seek out and listen to. So, it's one thing to have an Instagram account where you have a bunch of pictures of me in front of a jet saying hustle. I'd rather listen to the person who's actually been in the trenches, have had success. And then how you lay out, I know in this book, you lay out a blueprint for success. And I'm sure in the new book, you're doing a similar thing for people coming into this world and how to be successful. I think look for that blueprint. If you're young and you're getting started in your career, look for a blueprint. This book is that blueprint, as far as I can tell. I haven't read it yet, but I am going to read it. So.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly how I ended up writing my book, John. Over the course of my career and over time, I was just sought out by young people or parents. Can you talk to my son or daughter and give them some help? And so I was just surprised that everything that I was talking to them was it was foreign to them. It was like, you see they go, that's really good.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've never thought of that before?
I know, it's funny.
Okay. And I'm going, I said, are you serious?
Yeah.
And so none of this stuff is talked about in school. And not so long ago, I gave a talk to a Marine ROTC unit. And when I was done, a couple of them came up and says, where can I buy your book? I said, well, I don't have a book. I said, this is just what I think that you all need to do. And they said, well, you need to write a book. So, and people have been encouraging me to do that. And I had the time to do it. So I did. Well, and you're on your second one too, John.
That's right. You're on number 2. That's great. Well, you're further along. My number 2 hasn't out yet, so it's getting closer though. So, well, very good. How can people find out more about you and your books and what you do?
Okay, I have a website. It's called fredstuvek.com, fredstuvek.com. And on it, I have bio, blogs, podcasts, interviews, and links to sites where you can buy it, such as Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple, et cetera. I even have a contact button there. If you have any questions, want to get a hold of me, I'm on there as well. And, before I wrote this first book, what did Darwin say? It's not the strong that survive, it's those who adapt. Well, up until the time I wrote this book, John, I was a social media ghost, but I was told I had to. So I reluctantly, I came on board, and so I have a presence, and I'm on there, and I started getting a little more active, probably about 10, 11 months ago. But you have to today. Yeah, you can say, well, I don't want to, I don't like to. It doesn't matter. This is what you need to do. You have to adapt. You have to do it. If you don't, you won't be as successful.
Yeah.
So
it's about adapting. I'm on
social media.
Yep. You're on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. We met on Twitter. That's where we first met each other, was on Twitter, which, I'm thankful. I met a lot of great leaders just on Twitter. It's funny. People talk about social media being a problem, and it can be. And some people spend all their day just arguing back and forth on politics or whatever the issue is. I've used it as a learning tool, and I've been using it as a networking tool, and I've met some amazing people. And you can take a tool like Twitter and use it for your success as well. And it doesn't have to be someplace where you're just screaming and yelling at each other all the time. So,
yeah, one of the things I've found, John, is you can do anything, but you can't do everything. Okay. So when it comes to social media, you can't do all of it. So one of the things I've done is I've concentrated on one platform, and I started doing this about a year ago. I said, okay, I'm gonna spend most of my time on Twitter. Now, I am very disciplined about how much time I spend on there, because you can get OCD about it, and then that's not good either. But you're right. If you use it right, and you can make some good connections, meet some interesting people, such as yourself. And I mean, there are some trolls out there, but I mean, I don't take it personally. I mean, if you don't know them and they don't know you, how can it be personal? It's just words. It's just coming from something. It could be a bot for all we know.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, who knows, John? I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, like I said, I think you can be used for good, and I know you use it for good, and I do. And I think there's a group of people out there that are trying to make themselves better, and they're using tools like Twitter to make it happen. There's nothing wrong with that. So you can use these things for good as well as for wasting time too. But I choose to use them to learn, to meet people like you, to try to grow as a leader. And that's what I've been trying to do with it. In fact, this podcast, I get a chance to meet people like you, and I'm learning so much when I listen to these episodes, and I listen to them over and over again. I'm thinking, I missed that when we were talking. So it's really good to get this stuff down, because I'm learning every day. And I think that and smart people are listening to podcasts as they're going back and forth to work, and they're becoming a better leader, a better person, a better better father, a better husband. I think people are trying to better themselves. I think that's great. I think podcasts are amazing for that very reason.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. And John, I appreciate you having me on. And, I don't have a podcast, but if I ever do, I'll ask you to come on. But I won't wait, because I'm probably not going to do it. I don't think that well. But I enjoy doing the podcasts, particularly with people such as yourself. And again, I think if you listen to some of these podcasts on people that are successful, there's some common threads that weave throughout all of these podcasts, all the stories. And those threads are the fabric of what makes someone successful. So if people are listening and learning, okay, and grasping what's being said, accept it, and make the changes that are necessary, they'll be fine.
That's great. I like that. So thank you very much, Fred. I appreciate that. So everybody check out, we're going to put links to Fred's resources, his website, the books. And we'll have also his social media links as well. We'll put that in there as well, so you can reach out to Fred like I did, and learn from somebody that's been there and done that and has been very successful. So Fred, I really appreciate all your insight and all your contributions to the show.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Sean. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. So that's it. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.
Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all you do.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information and updates, please visit our website at www.deepleadershippodcast.com or johnsrennie.com. Until next time, take care.